I feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer!
I don't care what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Chris and Dom here, and before we begin, as always, make sure you like, follow, share, and subscribe after watching all our videos. Really pump us up in the algorithm, and we can keep producing the quality content that we have for, like the last 3-4 years, man.
I know, it's crazy looking
dope.
at it. Yeah.
We're in the middle of a block now.
Yep.
We have our NFL playoff games, the most exciting and weird and crazy playoff game blocks, and we're on to the divisional round today. We have one of not only the best divisional round games, but one of just the best NFL games ever.
Yes.
With this one.
It's definitely one of those games where started with a blowout and then one team came back and then it was just such a great game. We're talking about the Epic in Miami.
All in the Miami Heat at the Orange Bowl. So much humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's cramping up out there. So 1981 AFC Divisional Playoff at the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida on January 22nd, 1982 between the Chargers and Dolphins. This is the Chargers' heyday of Coryell. This is what will turn out to be their last chance at trying to get a Super Bowl.
Forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Weekend at Bernie's, just a dark, strange tale. And trust me, as someone, this is the last of the teams, because after this, when I grew up there, nobody liked the Chargers.
And the sunglasses make it light. I just want to point that out. I just want, but yeah, so the Chargers, high-powered offense, really horrible defense.
That's essentially what it was. I mean, Dan Fouts, when I looked at his statistics, because they showed it in the game, like the regular season stats, I was like flabbergasted because he's outpassing dudes now where at that time you could legally fist a wide receiver no matter how far down the field that they were.
So it is very interesting to see that because it is not a different game, but definitely a way more physical game, especially towards quarterbacks and wide receivers. But you see the Chargers' only plan was, we're going to outscore you.
Yeah.
You can score, but we're going to outscore you.
Finally going to score.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, God.
It's like Beavis in front of the White House.
Yep.
But so they win the AFC West for the third year in a row. They're 10-6. Don Coryell created this offense back at San Diego State, which he later brought to the Cardinals with Eric Metcalf's dad. And now the Chargers, it's still being used in the NFL today.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely insane. Fouts had over 4,800 passing yards and 33 tutties. They had a two-headed monster in the backfield with Chuck Muncie and James Brooks, which was crazy. Muncie had 1,144 yards rushing and led the NFL with 19 touchdowns. So they call it Air Coryell, but on the ground, they were awesome.
I was just going to say, it was just a full high-powered offense because it felt like they had every piece of that offense put together and then just some guys playing defense.
Yeah, no, Charlie Joyner in the Hall of Fame was the veteran leader of that receiving corps at over 1,000 yards. During the season, I don't know if you read anything about this, John Jefferson, their Pro Bowl wide receiver, had a contract dispute.
And got traded.
They traded him to Green Bay, which back in the day was like, you're going to Siberia and playing in that gulag. Yeah. And it ruined his NFL career.
Yeah.
But he wanted more money.
Yeah, he wanted to get paid what he thought he should get paid. And they were like, nah, we'll just trade you.
And they got Wes Chandler from the Saints, who was an incredible... He almost had, if he had played the full 1982 season, he would have had 2,000 yards in 16 games.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely crazy. And then Hall of Fame tight end Kellen Winslow. What more can you say on offense? Over 1,000 yards receiving. For a tight end at that time, it's Ditka-esque. Like, he's the next step after Ditka, as we brought up in that episode you should check out.
I was just going to say, because it is very rare, because really the tight end was blocking and dump passes almost.
Yeah.
And, like, he would actually make runs out, and like you said, the entire season. It wasn't like
30 yards down the field before he catches it.
Yes, exactly.
Their O-line, they had a lot of good veterans. Ed White, one of the guys, he was the one who taught Kyle Turley how to play O-line at SDSU.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Nice little spider web.
Nice little spider web. The defense, as you said, sucked, and they traded away their best player this year.
Yes.
In future Hall of Famer Freddie Dean.
That's what I wanted to bring up because they were 26th out of the 28 teams that in that era of the NFL in defense. So it really was our offense is going to win or lose us the games, because
Yeah.
it was so much so that it was just kind of ridiculous how this game kind of plays out, because you would never think, oh, we're scoring this many points and Miami's gonna kind of like still be, or not. I just, this game was so ridiculous because I don't remember it that much. And then going back and watching it, it was just two offenses just going at each other.
And one offense was hot and the other wasn't. It wasn't like it was possession score.
No.
It was just like swaths of time were just, it's like the Bills-Oilers game.
It really
essentially.
was like defenses or the entire team would take off almost the quarter. They were like, you guys had the first quarter. We're going to have the second quarter. We're going to trade a little in the third. It was such a good game.
So the Dolphins, they go 11-4-1 and they win the AFC East. Unlike the Chargers, where you have a future Hall of Famer at quarterback, they're platooning.
They got two different boys.
With David Woodley, more of the running athletic quarterback, and then, Don Strock. That man was just the best backup quarterback. Just getting a sweet tan, smoking darts with that. Maybe the jacket on if it gets a little chilly there. And maybe he has a jacket on if it's snowing a little bit, if you know what I mean, in Miami at this time.
This is Miami, baby, and this is the heyday. This is Miami Vice. All right? That's what this team is.
Tonight on Miami Vice, Woodley gets Strock a coffee. They nicknamed the two of them Woodstock, which we've brought up on this podcast. They don't do nicknames like they used to anymore.
I know, because that was so good. How you can have a nickname for two different guys, but they are just like the quarterback core of this Miami Dolphins team?
The kids could call you Hoju. So they had over 3,100 yards passing combined, and it's no wonder 2 years later they go, this Dan Marino guy's pretty good.
Yep.
But because they don't have Dan Marino holding the ball with the laces in,
Thank you.
They're a ground and pound offense like they were in the 70s with those heyday teams with Zonka, Kick, and Morris. So Tony Nathan and Andre Franklin combined for almost 1,500 yards rushing. Nathan led the league with a 5.3 yards per carry. So, I mean, he was a really underrated running back in the late 70s, early 80s. This is pre-Marx Brothers, so you have just an amalgam of receivers that no one's really ever heard of. Jimmy Cephalo, not more, though. He was like the third receiver when the Marx Brothers finally got there. Tommy Vigorito, all these guys, just guys.
Yeah, seriously, though. It is such a opposite of the way the Chargers were set up, where I felt like they were like, we're putting all our money in the offense. The Dolphins were like, yeah, we got guys playing receiver, but our defense.
Well,
and your
nickname for the defense. That was a Shula, Bill Arnsparger, who was later the Chargers defensive coordinator when they made the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So the Killer Bees defense that year, because everybody's last name seemed to be B. Mm-hmm. You had Doug Betters, Bob Baumhauer, Bob Brzezinski, and then Glenn and Lyle Blackwood in the secondary. They only allowed a combined 27 points in their final 3 regular season games. It's what won them the AFC East that year.
Yep. And they were first, and this is what I mean by Chargers being the 26th out of 28th team in defense. Miami was number 1 with points allowed. And like you said, they allowed 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals in their last 3 games. Like, just thinking about that stat where you're like, geez, that is like ridiculous.
Unstoppable force against the immovable object, essentially, which I always like seeing in the playoffs.
Me too.
It's just very enjoyable, like a clash of styles to see like which one's better at each one. And it provides for some pretty good games.
2 different ways that these teams really made it to the playoffs, and then you get to see them go battle it out against each other.
And they call it the Epic in Miami for a reason. So we get into the game here. It's an evening game, which is even nicer. But the humidity and heat are a problem kind of out the gate.
Yep. It's weird in Miami, humidity, heat, and it was still snowing. I don't get it. I don't get how Miami works, but that's how it works.
Babe, get my parka. We're going to South Beach. Why? You know why.
Because I'm going skiing.
Get some tote skis, you know. So McConaughey in that movie so bad.
I love him in that movie.
Because he's still all skinny from Dallas Buyers Club, so you're like, you really do look like a cokehead, sir.
You really look like an 80s cokehead, and your suit is wearing you.
Yes, it is. It's kind of the bat you jack off. So. Anyway, so we get into the game. The Chargers get the ball first. They start at their own 22. They face a 3rd and 14 until Fouts has a bomb to Wes Chandler to get them to the Miami 23. It was 47 yards. They end up starting the running game after that big play with Muncie, and he gets down to the 14-yard line, but they end up having to settle for a field goal.
So they started off 3-0 early in the first, and this is when it's such an interesting thing with playoff games because you get so excited for your team, and then a bunch of stuff happens, and you're like, we're the worst team in the NFL.
God, make it stop.
Because San Diego kicks a field goal. They then stop Miami on the next possession to punt it, and Muncie runs it all the way.
Yeah. Well,
So, like, it's such a ridiculous, like, you're thinking about it, you're like,
well,
we're
no,
gonna-
it's Wes Chandler.
Oh, it's Chandler runs it.
So they get him to
You're
go
right.
3 and out with a big sack
You're right.
by Leroy Jones. When I was watching this game, Jen was with me, and she just yelled, what was that guy's name? Leroy Jones? And she yells, Leroy Jenkins! And I'm like, I could not love you any more than what you did in this moment.
Oh, God, that's so good. So Chandler runs it all the way back for a touchdown. Now it's 10-0 early in the first.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing that you think about. You're like, oh, we're already down 10-0. Our what was the plan? Our defense is not stopping their offense.
And our special
teams, yeah.
Hank Bauer, the Chargers special teams ace, was like, I didn't really get my guy very much, but then I felt this whoosh behind me. And this fucking Chandler just went down the sidelines untouched because it was a shank punt. Brooks is their normal punt returner. They put Chandler as the up man, and he's like, "All right."
Yes, no, because it was like a shank punt, and he definitely caught it and was just like, "I have this lane wide open."
And then because when it rains, it pours on special teams. Because special teams, special times, bro. Benershka has this weird pooch kick.
You just don't see stuff like this in NFL anymore. Not because there's a new kickoff, but like it really is a weird play.
So he has this short kickoff, and it lands in no man's land, essentially, between the up men, the wedge, whatever. And if a kickoff goes more than 10 yards, regardless if you change the rules,
it's live.
It's a live ball.
Yep.
And it's like Little Giant. They're standing around, butts.
It's so weird watching that play because Miami literally is like standing looking at each other like, we got this? Is this us?
Yeah, right.
It's so weird.
They get the ball inside the Miami 30, and on 3rd and 2, Winslow gets them down to the 1 on like a little pop pass, like a little dump pass.
Oh yeah, and this is when Muncie just rambles
just gets
it
the
in.
Toss. Yeah, and it's 17-0. It's 17-0 with 3:58 in the first quarter. I mean, if you're Miami, if you're Shula, Arnsparger, whatever, you have to be just absolutely shell-shocked.
Yes.
Like, look, we know this team's going to score a lot of points, but this quick and in this fashion, I think, is what like probably drove them nuts.
With the misplay on their special teams, really 2 special teams misplays, the bad punt and then just the bonehead play to not get the ball on their own when they're receiving it. And then you get down into Woodley, literally the next possession, just throws an interception.
Picked off by Glenn Edwards, off a tip pass. Their offensive line couldn't protect him. Like, it wasn't fully his fault.
Exactly.
This stuff was they just had no rhythm, poor execution, and Chargers get the ball. It's 3rd and 7 at the Miami 8. Fouts just throws a swing pass to Brooks, and he scores again.
Yep.
The Chargers score again. They're up 24-0 with a minute and a half left in the third quarter. So literally, only 13+ minutes have been played, and you're at 24-0 hole.
And now here's the question that I wanted to pose to you. Do you think that there's any kind of detriment to getting up that, like literally going up 24-0? To it being so early that they almost kind of shut off?
No, because
it's playoffs, baby. But
I think a team like Houston, as we discussed in that episode, who everything bad had happened to before again and again. And I think if you're the Chargers, and I even heard Fouts talk about, I'm glad you brought that up, where he's just like, we just need to keep scoring because of our defense. Like, you have that in the back of your mind, because Houston was like, we're up 32 points and our defense isn't shitty.
Yes.
So like maybe... and we're worried about it. The Chargers are probably like, no, let's just keep scoring.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's still over 3 quarters to go for the Dolphins because They get the ball. They go 3 and out. Woodley takes a sack on 3rd and 18, and they bring Strock in off. They just throw their hands up and say, Strock, you're in.
I was going to say, I wanted to talk about this possession of play because there was 2 sacks and 1 almost forced fumble where Miami got it back. Yeah. And at that point, I bet Shula was like, we have to change something.
Yes.
I don't even care what it is, but we are getting they were getting beat by their defense. By the Chargers defense.
They were, and their special teams was just killing them out
killing
there.
them.
Just like if you give up, because punt return is on an automatic 7, I add another 7 onto that pooch kick.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the Chargers offense converted, that's on the special teams.
I agree.
For a short field. So they stopped the Chargers on their next drive. So Strock ends up coming in, and all he said was, I just threw the ball.
Yep.
And that's what you want to. It's like Earl Morrall coming off the bench for the Dolphins back in the day.
But it was that kind of thing where I think that he was getting rid of the ball faster than Woodley. Yeah. So like the pressure wasn't that bad because Woodley, like you were saying, more of like a scramble, and they were just housing him.
Yeah, they were annihilated. The line couldn't protect him.
No.
He had a big pass to Coryell Harris for 17 yards.
Yep.
And then Nathan had a huge one down to the San Diego 35. And then he gets a great bomb to Cephalo. And it was one of those plays where back in the day it counted. The defender pushed him out.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the ref called him in the grass
Yep.
like he would have made the catch if he wasn't pushed down to the 17. And then they end up not converting, but they have to settle for an Uwe von Schaman field goal for make it 24-3. So they're back. They're not back in the game, but it's like the Bills coach telling him to play for pride.
Exactly.
Shula wasn't much of a yeller like that, I don't think.
No. But if you're Chargers, you're like, yeah, they can have a field goal. You know what I mean? There's no thought that this is going to start this avalanche of points.
But in the back of your mind for the Chargers, you're like, Eric Coryell is just going to keep scoring points.
Yep.
We're still 3 scores ahead. So the Dolphins D ends up getting the ball back. There was a sack strip on the Chargers' preceding drive to where Strock converted with a 19-yard pass to Coryell Harris again. And they were, when you watch this game, Miami wasn't really beating them with long bombs. They were just tearing apart the back 7 with the intermediate passing game.
Yes.
It was in the seam, inside the numbers where they were just being eaten alive, essentially.
And I do feel like it was because they had that tight end that could run these routes in the middle of the field too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like the Miami receivers, it wasn't like, this is our guy, we're going to him. It was like, who's open right now? We're going to that person, which is exactly what you want to do against this Chargers not great defense.
There was a great first down completion to tight end Jim Rose that gets him 1st and goal at the 9. Nathan gets him down to the 4 on a play action pass, and on 3rd and goal, Strock finds Rose in the back of in the center of the end zone to make it 24-10.
Yep. So now we got a game. And that's all I got to say.
No, I mean, it's 2:46 left in the second quarter, and I think if you're the Chargers, you're like, oh, Jesus, what's going on? But there's still enough time. We can still put points up before the half, and Miami is getting the ball when we kick off in the second half. All they had to do, all Miami had to do was just stop them from scoring points.
Yes.
And I think in the back of their mind, that's kind of what they were doing. The Chargers start moving the ball for the first time since that last scoring drive, with some running from Muncie and a big pass to Winslow. The drive stalls, and they have to go for a long field goal with Rolf Benerschke for 55 yards.
Now, here's where I do think this was a mistake.
You punt it. Even if it's a touchback, they have to go about 50 to 60 yards just to get into field goal range.
Nobody in this era is hitting 55-yarders.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's another thing where you're like, that's kind of a crazy attempt to give them good field position at the end of the half where they get the ball back in the start of the next half.
And what always slayed me is it's not like they got one big play and there's still like maybe a minute and a half on the clock. There's 30 seconds.
Yes.
Punt the ball.
Just punt the ball. This is, I feel like this is such a huge mistake by them.
Thank you. I was watching it. I'm like, what the fuck are you even doing?
And then we come back to this, Chargers all about scoring points. So I feel like that's in their head where they're like, we can't go the whole second quarter without scoring a point. Let's kick this in. Huge mistake. Obviously he misses it. Miami gets ball and really good field position. Like, I think they were at the
45.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're at their own 45. And granted, there's 30 seconds left. I don't think they have any timeouts.
Yep.
So what ended up happening was Strock goes to work, and with 6 seconds left, they're at the Charger 40, which is even longer of a field goal. You're not sending Von Schaman out there to kick that long of a field goal. So they went with a gadget, Chris.
And this is one of those plays that turns your whole season around.
That's right.
It gets the entire fan base into it. It's such an amazing play to call and execute at the end of a half.
I believe it's called the annexation of Puerto Rico. Bubble-rooski! So what happens is...
Oh, God.
They go with the gadget, and they go with the hook and lateral. So and kudos to Strock for the perfect pass to Darrell Harris on the hook route. Harris catches it, and coming behind him from out of the backfield is Tony Nathan. All of the Charger guys, I forget who the safety was, but he said, I had contain. I'm not supposed to do exactly what I did.
Oh, yeah.
He went to the ball to try and tackle him inbounds, and by doing that, the angle that he took left the entire sideline open for Nathan to run with the ball.
So Nathan gets a lateral right to him, and if you look at it, he is so open, like you were saying, on that sideline where it was like, oh my God. And if you're Miami, from going from 24-0 down to being 24-17 on that play and getting the ball back, you're like, we're winning this game.
Watching that game and hearing how loud that crowd was.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that had to just be like, that'll put some lead in your pencil. Like, that was crazy.
You think crowds were better or worse on Coke?
I think better.
Me too.
Like,
those
in a
Miami,
frenzy?
yeah,
Like,
those Miami crowds, you're just going crazy.
Just I'm going to the men's room, a little toot ski. Oh my God, Tony Nathan. I'm going down to the locker room and getting him something. No.
Yep.
So they end up scoring. Last play of the half, it's 24-17. Don Shula said, it never worked in practice. All you have to do is pray and hope it works out of desperation.
Yeah. No, seriously, though, because that play was so smart because, like you were saying, the defense was like, we just have to keep them in play, tackle them, and the clock will probably run out. And it just opened up the literal game that it was. At that point, 24-10, you're still thinking Chargers are going to score a bunch of points.
Yeah.
At this point, 24-17, you're like, oh, this is such an even game. We're ready to go.
Yeah, 24-10, you're like, well, the second half should be interesting.
Yeah.
Now you're like, whoa, we might be witnessing some history here. So Miami gets the ball at their own 26 in the third quarter. There is a crazy sideline pass to Harris that gets him down to the San Diego 39. Like, it was a perfect pass by Strock between two guys. And by that point, the heat and humidity are really starting to affect both defenses because both offenses are just slinging it everywhere.
Yep.
On second and they have a 3rd and 6 at the 35. And there's a pass over the middle again to Harris for 16. And on 3rd and 9, on the preceding next 3 plays, Strock hits Rose again for a touchdown. He in the huddle, Strock told Rose, you're going to be wide open on this play.
Yeah?
Which is like the most ballsy, like, oh, God. So with 10:50 to go in the third quarter, it's 24-24. And that's the one thing I'll always argue with games like this or the Houston Buffalo or the 28-3. There's no such thing as running up a score in the NFL anymore with the passing game.
No.
And this is 1981.
Yeah.
With that type of deficit that they were facing.
No, seriously, there is no taking your foot off the pedal. It literally is like, we don't know what's going to happen in this game. Score as many points as we can.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You know?
Like, just whoever gets the ball last, essentially.
Yeah, seriously, though.
Both teams trade possessions, and then the Chargers get the ball later in the third quarter. Big first down pass to the Miami 31 with 5 minutes to go. And then Chandler gets him down to the 25, and then Fouts throws an absolute laser to Kellen Winslow for a touchdown with 4:15 left in the third quarter on a great pump fake. They go up 31-24, and you're thinking, okay, now we have a game because both teams are engaged again.
Yes.
Another pooch kick by Benershka gives Miami at least recovers this one.
I was going to say, it's so weird to see the kicking strategy and the mistakes on the special teams in this game because a lot of points get generated from that.
Oh, for sure. No, like, because you're setting up field position.
Yes, the field position that I feel like they just didn't. San Diego just wasn't really cared. They just didn't give a shit about it. They were like, well, I mean, 20 to our 50, whatever.
Joyner's going to catch like a 60-yarder. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So, Tony Nathan on this drive has one of the most incredible catch and runs I've seen from a running back on a dump pass. He broke 7 tackles to set up a 3rd and inches, and essentially what ends up happening, they end up converting for it. 2:42 left to go at the 27. There's a big pass to Cephalo over the middle to midfield, and then Hardy ties the game.
Yeah.
Their other tight end on a pass from Strock. It's 31-31.
Which is wild at this point. And then
I can't imagine watching this live.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Like, obviously you watch it, tape delay, you know what's going to happen, whatever. But just in the moment, you have to be thinking, this is one of the greatest games ever played in the sport.
Yes.
Chargers' next drive, 3rd and 10 at the 17. Fouts is picked off.
And this is at the end of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So this is right at the end of the third quarter. It's tie game. Miami gets possession. So now just in Miami, you're like, here we go.
Here we go. So after the Lyle Blackwood pick and pitch to Gerald Small, they're at the 14, and they're starting the fourth quarter looking to take their first lead of the game.
Yes.
So what ends up happening at the San Diego 12, there's a sweep to Nathan, and he scores. It's 38-31.
And just to think, we went 24-0. Now we're at 38-31 Miami. That's how crazy this game was.
Oh, for sure. The next possession, the Chargers are really needing a big play, and this is when Kellen Winslow starts getting carried off the field.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it starts with him being like his teammates, like, you got to get up, dude. It's like, I'm cramping. I can't do it.
Yep.
I can't do it.
Because of the humidity. And it was brutal out there on that day.
They end up having to give the ball back to the Dolphins. And at this point, and I think it was a little too early, they start going with Franklin and Nathan on the ground.
I know what you mean. They start to really be like the clock. We need to like wind the clock down. And they should have kept it with Don. And in that, what was working, they should have just kept that going.
And it's not like they weren't moving the ball. It's like, I get what you're doing.
Yes.
And you're eating time, and you need to keep Fouts on the sideline. And they drive it all the way down to the San Diego 24. It's first down, and Franklin fumbles at the 18. The Charger defenders at that point, what they had talked about was, all we were looking to do is one guy holds him, other guys come in and try and get the strip.
Yep.
That was they didn't think they could stop them from scoring.
And they did that. That's what was so impressive about that play, because really Miami should have put some sort of points on the board from that drive. And
if they kick a field goal, they win the game. That's what I mean. Is like, you're already in Von Schaman's range. You could have iced it right there because the clock would have worked against San Diego too much.
Yep.
So Fouts was excited with 4:39 to go, and now you start one of the greatest drives ever. 4:39 to go. He has a pass to Joyner to get to the 32, and then another one where he's pushed out of bounds, and then he's short. Muncie ends up being short at about the 40, and then another huge pass to Joyner at the 45 with 2:35 to go, and then down to the Miami 39. So this is where he's targeting Joyner because Winslow is fucking spent.
Yeah.
Spent. They get to the 2-minute warning at the Miami 35, and on 3rd and 5 after a batted pass, Winslow's back in the game to get a huge first down with 1:31 to go.
I bet it's one of those things on the sideline. He's like, we need you in this game.
Yeah. I don't know if we have other tight ends, Kellen. We need you.
We need you.
We need you. So with 1:31, there's a 9-yard pass to Chandler to set up 1st and goal. And this is an amazing play where Fouts is kind of flushed from the pocket, where you're almost flooding the right side of the end zone, and Winslow's open. And Fouts has talked about, when I threw this ball,
It was to Winslow.
and it was either to him or it's incomplete, where if anyone catches it for Miami, they'll be out of bounds.
Yes.
So he lofts it into the end zone, and then out of, not even in the screen, James Brooks comes running across the end line and catches it.
So it misses Winslow high, and then Brooks literally, like you said, comes out of nowhere. And I bet it was such a ridiculous relief because you see Winslow, nope, and then it's just right into Brooks's hands. You're like, oh my God.
We didn't draw it up like that one, Coach.
No.
He said he wasn't even an intended on that play that they had run multiple times. He never threw him the ball once.
Yep.
And Fouts called it one of the smartest plays he's ever seen on a football field for someone to have the presence of mind. So they tie the game with 58 seconds left, and their special teams almost fucks them because it's a squib kick. And Fouts has even said, I love squib kicks. You
Yeah.
know why? You get great field position. Instead of just kicking it deep and making sure your coverage is right, they give Miami cake easy field position because Eddie Hill runs the ball to the Miami 40.
Yeah, he runs it like 30 yards on the off the kickoff, and you're like, this is bad, especially if you're San Diego. You're like, why are we doing that on this play? I get it if that's your thing for other stuff, but man, that was another, I feel like, bad decision from special teams.
Oh, absolutely. So Strock on his next two passes almost gets picked off.
Yep.
Which is very bad. Then there's another one where a pass to Nathan gets him down to the 31, but there's an interception where it's stripped on this drive where the Chargers get the ball.
So they literally intercepted it. Chargers intercept it, but then it's a strip from, like, a receiver strips the ball from this cornerback. I forgot exactly who it was. And it just, that in itself where you're like, this game is insane.
It had everything in
Yes.
it. This game had everything in it. So that's set them up at midfield, and then Nathan gets them down to the 31. It's a first down. There's a run by Tommy Vigorito down to the 26, and then there's 4 seconds left. So this is like a 44, 43-yard field goal for Von Schaman to win the game.
Yep.
To win the game, and Kellen Winslow has talked about this, where the Chargers had something called a do-or-die team for special teams, where your best athletes go on the field and try and block the kick.
Yep.
The kick goes up, and Winslow gets it, and he's described it with just this amount of his finger to deflect the ball, not give it enough mustard, and the game goes to overtime.
Which is insane.
Oh my God, just absolutely ridiculous. Not the first time a Miami kicker has missed in a very crucial situation.
Bring that up. I didn't know if you know this. Backup quarterback Dan Marino was on the field, and he just held it wrong. People say Winslow got the tip, but it was a mishold, if you know what I mean. So it's 38-38 going into overtime.
And Uwe Von Schaman joined the Miami Police Department later.
That's true.
Under an assumed name of a missing hiker. So Chargers' first drive, Winslow's on fire. They can't be stopped moving the ball on this opening possession. So what ends up happening, there's a huge pass to Joyner. Muncie is leading the ground attack, and Brooks gets him to the 8-yard line.
So at this point, you're just like, just go for it.
I get why they chose to kick the field goal.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't on fourth down.
No.
But
Yep.
they go for the field goal with Benershka, and he shanks it. Left.
Bad.
Hard.
On a what should be a routine kick for them.
That's
you know
an
what
extra
I mean?
point.
That's an extra point. That's what I'm, yes. It really was special teams, man. Special teams, I feel like, won and kind of lost this game, especially for Miami.
Oh, for sure. Then we get deeper into overtime. Neither team is really sustaining a drive. Punts back and forth. The players are just exhausted. With about 6 minutes left, the Dolphins are at the 46, and there's a huge pass to Cephalo down to the San Diego 25. They end up getting it to the 18, and they bring in Von Schaman for a 35-yarder.
And you're thinking, Finkel and Schaman.
Finkel and Schaman.
Finkel and Schaman.
Together, how? So for the 35-yarder, they bring him in. Do-or-die teams out there again. Leroy, not Jenkins, comes up huge and blocks the field goal.
Yep.
Now it's winning time. Now the Chargers, and I mean, you keep going deeper into overtime like we've talked about in past episodes. Chargers get the ball back at their own 16, and then they start moving it. They actually are like, we gotta get the hell out of here right now.
No shit.
Swing pass to Brooks out to the 23, then an out route to Chandler for to the 31 for a first down. Another big pass to Chandler where they're at midfield. He got absolutely tattooed by Blackwood on this play.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was an amazing catch that he made. Joyner has a huge catch and run down to the 10 in Miami territory. And they call for a field goal again. And Bernurshka's talked about this where it was such a confidence boost for him, for Coryell to just say, just win. Just get us the hell out of here. So he comes in for a 29-yard field goal, and they win 41-38, which is absolutely insane.
Well, just the way the game went, one team scored 24 points, then the next team scored 24 points, and then they're just like trading off scores back and forth to like switching the lead. And then the overtime, it's not like 2 possessions. It's like 8 possessions.
Yeah.
It's so much football, and you could just see guys so unbelievably tired at the end of this game. The thing I saw from the San Diego, one of the guys, he was just like, when we were in the locker room, you think we would be like celebrating or whatever. It was more of like, we did it. We can get the hell out of here.
Is it over?
Yes. No, seriously. They were so tired at the end of this game.
Well, that's what snowfall is for, isn't it?
That's true.
That's true. So what ends up happening after this 41-38 epic, the Chargers advance to the AFC Championship game, where they play in the exact opposite conditions of this game. Again, in the cold, I think it's the coldest game ever played.
Oh, damn.
They played Cincinnati, and Fouts has talked about this game. It was impossible to pass because it was like throwing a rock.
Yeah.
What he brought up was the reason the Bengals moved the ball so well in that game was Ken Anderson basically had banana hands. He was able to grip the football, and because that offense is the original West Coast offense, they just dinked and dunked him, and his arm was so strong, like Fouts, he could get it through the wind.
Yep.
And that's what ended up killing him.
Yep.
The Chargers made the postseason again the following year, and they lost to the Dolphins in Woodley in Miami. They tattooed them 34-13. And that was it. That was the end. That was the end of, in my opinion, that might have been the end of football in San Diego.
Yeah.
Where end of an era, and then you're just mid until Marty gets there, and then all the disasters unfold. The Dolphins, on the other hand, even though they lost, they went to the Super Bowl the next year. The next year they drafted Dan Marino, and then they went back to another Super Bowl.
Yep.
And it's been now 40 years since they've been back. Because you don't think of Chargers and Dolphins in the playoffs anymore like you used to.
Not at all.
No.
And this was probably one of, if not the best playoff game ever. If you watch it, it is so exciting. It's so much fun. Yeah, this was a great ep.
Had everything.
Had everything.